imagine you're at a crowded, festive neighborhood Christmas party. It is December 1989.
Right.
The room is warm, people are laughing, the music's loud, and you are putting on your coat to leave. You turn your back for just a moment, like a fraction of a second, because your 5-year-old daughter asked to run into the next room to grab a handful of potato chips for the ride home.
Yeah, totally normal.
Exactly. You wait by the door, minutes pass, you walk into the next room to find her, and she is just gone.
It is a terrifying premise, honestly, because of the mundane normalcy of it. I mean,
Yeah.
a holiday party, a bowl of chips, and then a complete disappearance without a trace.
That is the exact scenario we're starting our deep dive with today. We are exploring the heartbreaking 1989 disappearance of 5-year-old Melissa Brannen from Lorton, Virginia. Number 3, 1989, the Woodside Apartments in Fairfax County, Virginia. Tammy Brannen, a single mother, realizes Melissa hasn't come back with her potato chips.
Right.
A frantic search begins within minutes. Over 300 volunteers end up scouring the apartment complex and the surrounding woods. But the thing is, the police do not spend days wondering who might be responsible.
No, they don't.
They zero in on a suspect almost instantly. It's a 25-year-old groundskeeper at the complex named Caleb Daniel Hughes.
Yeah, and the police focused on Hughes because, well, witness accounts from the party painted a deeply alarming picture of his behavior that specific night.
Oh, absolutely.
Multiple women reported that Hughes had been aggressively making crude sexual propositions to them throughout the whole evening.
Yeah, just awful behavior.
Right. Furthermore, several guests noticed Hughes was paying a highly inappropriate amount of attention to the young children playing at the party, specifically focusing on Melissa.
I mean, if he is paying inappropriate attention to kids, combined with that level of crude behavior with the women, that immediately elevates him from a creepy party guest to the primary target of an abduction investigation.
Absolutely.
And Hughes leaves the party around the exact same time Melissa vanishes. So the police don't wait until morning. By 1:00 a.m. that very night, they are knocking on the door of Caleb Hughes's apartment. His wife, Carol, lets them in and cooperates completely. And what the police find inside is, honestly, incredibly damning.
Oh, it's wild. Hughes is doing laundry at 1 in the morning.
Who does laundry at 1 a.m.?
Exactly. And he's actively washing the exact outfit he was wearing at the Christmas party. His clothes, his belt, and even the sheath for a large knife are in the wash.
Wow.
But the detail that truly alarmed investigators was his footwear. He had put his shoes in the washing machine, but before doing so, he had physically taken a blade and cut the sides of the soles off the shoes.
Okay, let's unpack this. If a person is cutting the physical rubber soles off their shoes, they are actively trying to alter the structure of the footwear, right?
Right.
Like to remove biological evidence or mud that could tie them to a specific geographical location. To me, this is like a suspect frantically trying to wipe a digital hard drive with a powerful magnet while the police are already standing in the room watching him do it.
That's a great comparison. Those massive red flags.
Yeah.
And his wife completely dismantles his alibi right in front of the police. She tells the officers he arrived home from work several hours later than he normally would. She also noticed unexplained extra mileage on his Honda Civic's odometer.
Yeah, you can't really explain that away easily.
Exactly. And when the police question Hughes about the timeline and the mileage, he claims he took a longer route home because he went on a midnight run to buy a 6-pack of beer.
Which is a terrible lie because Virginia state regulations strictly dictate that liquor stores do not sell alcohol past midnight.
Right.
So Hughes is caught washing sliced-up shoes at 1 a.m. His alibi is a proven fabrication, and multiple witnesses saw him creeping on children at the party right before one vanished.
Yeah.
With all of this incredibly suspicious behavior and circumstantial evidence, why could the police not simply arrest him for murder right then and there?
Well, this brings us to a significant legal hurdle. At the time, they had no body.
Ah, right.
While Virginia law didn't strictly mandate the physical recovery of a body to file a murder charge, the law did require prosecutors to establish the jurisdiction of the crime.
Meaning they had to know where it happened.
Exactly. They had to prove precisely where the murder happened to ensure it occurred within the state's legal boundaries. Because Melissa had vanished into the night, prosecutors couldn't definitively prove where a crime took place or even definitively prove a murder had occurred at all.
Wow.
And Hughes understood this loophole. He knew that if he maintained his silence about her location, prosecutors lacked the jurisdictional foundation to charge him with murder.
So the defense strategy is basically, you cannot prove where it happened, therefore you cannot prosecute me for it here.
Right.
That has to be infuriating for the detectives. But this is exactly where the police and the forensic science teams get highly creative. They realize they need a back door to secure a conviction.
Yeah, they do.
So they impound Hughes's car, a red Honda Civic sedan, and they basically take it apart at a microscopic level.
They really did. The FBI transported the vehicle and essentially dismantled the interior. Technicians in a sterile scraping room used specialized tape to lift every single microscopic fiber, piece of hair, and speck of lint from the passenger seat of that car.
That's incredible dedication.
It is. They then examined the tape under high-powered comparison microscopes. And what they found was a narrative told entirely through lint. They isolated 50 blue acrylic fibers and 10 red cotton fibers.
Yeah, okay.
Now, they didn't have Melissa's clothes to compare these fibers to because obviously she was missing, but they knew from Tammy Brannen that Melissa was wearing a very specific outfit that night.
Right, the Big Bird outfit.
Exactly. A Big Bird sweater and a plaid skirt, which was part of a Sesame Street collection, sold exclusively at JCPenney.
So the FBI literally goes out and purchases the exact replica outfit from JCPenney to use as a control sample.
Yep.
And when they put the replica sweater and the fibers from the car seat under the comparison microscope, they find a perfect match. They match the acrylic polymer structure. They match the specific chemical signature of the rare dye lot used in the manufacturing process.
Amazing.
And they do not stop at the clothing fibers. They also find rare dyed rabbit fur on the passenger seat. Fur that perfectly matches the coat Tammy Brannen wore to the party that evening. Fur that would have naturally shed onto Melissa's clothing when her mother hugged her or carried her.
Yeah, the scientific deduction was airtight. The unique combination of the JCPenney acrylic fibers, the red cotton fibers, and the dyed rabbit fur placed Melissa Brannen in the front seat of Caleb Hughes's car beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay, wait. I have to push back here.
Sure.
If Melissa was leaving a Christmas party to go home, she was wearing her heavy winter coat over that Big Bird sweater. I mean, it is December in Virginia. It is freezing outside.
Right.
How on earth did blue sweater fibers get transferred all over the passenger car seat if the sweater was entirely covered by a heavy winter coat?
What's fascinating here is the prosecution anticipated that exact question. And they actually used it as the linchpin to lock Hughes away. Yet the prosecution looked at the physics of that fiber transfer and made a brilliant legal deduction. They argued to the jury that there is absolutely no innocent reason for Caleb Hughes to have removed a 5-year-old girl's heavy winter coat inside a freezing cold car in the middle of December.
Oh my gosh.
The only logical reason he would take her coat off, thereby exposing the sweater that left those blue fibers rubbed into the seat, was to sexually assault her.
That is a staggering deduction.
Yeah.
Because they could not charge him with murder due to the jurisdictional location issue, they utilized the mechanism of the fiber transfer to charge him with abduction with intent to defile.
Precisely. The microscopic evidence proved she was in the car, and the physics of the fiber transfer proved his intent. In March of 1991, the jury convicted him based on this narrative, and the judge handed down a 50-year prison sentence.
Wow.
It was heralded as a massive victory built almost entirely on the back of trace forensic science.
So the fiber analysis was a neat, tidy legal victory. But a deeper look at the sources reveals that the science in this case wasn't entirely a smooth triumph.
No, it wasn't.
While the fiber evidence was successfully locking Hughes away, behind the scenes at the FBI laboratory, this massive controversy was brewing over the blood evidence. A controversy that ultimately spilled out into the courtroom and forced a real reckoning within the agency.
Yeah, this case perfectly illustrates the growing pains of forensic science during the early 1990s. When police initially searched Hughes's car, alongside the fibers, they found paper tissues with blood on them.
Okay.
They sent these tissues to the FBI lab for analysis. And at the time, the FBI had 2 different experts in 2 different departments examine this exact same evidence. Robert Crispino, a serology examiner, and Dwight Adams, a DNA examiner.
And the 2 experts return with 2 wildly different conclusions, right?
Exactly.
Crispino conducts his serology test. And serology is an older science that looks at basic blood types and proteins. It's kind of like trying to identify a suspect's getaway vehicle by simply noting it is a red sedan.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So Crispino concludes that the blood on the tissues could be Melissa's. However, his test parameters mean the blood could also belong to roughly 40% of the general population.
Right.
But then Dwight Adams conducts the DNA test. And DNA analysis is a much more modern, exact science. It is the equivalent of reading the vehicle's exact license plate. Adams's results explicitly exclude Melissa. The DNA definitively proves it is not her blood on the tissues.
Right. And in the scientific community, you have a clear hierarchy of evidence. The highly precise DNA test completely supersedes the vague serology test.
Makes total sense.
But the prosecutor for this case, Robert Horan, was completely focused on securing a conviction. Horan made the controversial decision to basically ignore the definitive DNA results.
Wow.
Yeah, during the trial, he only presented the serology report to the jury, heavily implying that the blood found on those tissues belonged to Melissa.
So he heavily implies it is her blood when he literally holds a report in his hand proving it is not. He justified this move by telling the judge that the DNA expert was, quote, inexperienced. This maneuvering led to a completely upside-down scenario in the courtroom where the FBI's own DNA expert, Dwight Adams, was called to the stand to testify for the defense against the prosecution.
It created an absolute media uproar at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, headlines across the country highlighted FBI experts being at odds in a major trial.
Yeah, I bet.
The internal friction over this evidence eventually led to a formal whistleblower complaint, a highly detailed investigation by the Office of the Inspector General. The whistleblower alleged that the head of the laboratory unit actively pressured Grispino to alter his serology report to align with the DNA findings to avoid embarrassing the agency in court.
The Inspector General's investigation eventually concluded there was no malicious pressure applied, but rather a profound misunderstanding among FBI management about how the different specificities of these sciences actually worked. But looking at the courtroom tactics, here's where it gets really interesting. What the prosecutor did is like a doctor burying a crystal clear modern MRI just so they can base their diagnosis on a blurry, scratched-up X-ray from the 1980s.
Exactly.
Purely because the blurry X-ray gives them the answer they want. Is it not a dangerous precedent for the justice system to intentionally hide better science from a jury to win a case, even if investigators are certain they have the right suspect?
Oh, it is an incredibly dangerous precedent, which is exactly why this case served as a watershed moment for the FBI. It forced a massive internal reckoning.
Yeah.
The agency realized they just couldn't operate with different scientific units producing conflicting reports on the exact same piece of evidence. Ultimately, the fallout from this specific trial prompted the FBI to merge their DNA and serology units into one cohesive department.
That's a huge change.
It was. They fundamentally changed how forensic science is analyzed and reported to ensure that prosecutors couldn't cherry-pick scientific realities in the courtroom ever again.
Okay, so the trial ends. Hughes receives a 50-year sentence. The FBI learns a difficult lesson and reforms its laboratories. But, a guilty verdict doesn't magically heal a community.
No, it doesn't.
The neat legal resolution did not stop the agonizing pain for Melissa's family. In fact, right in the middle of this investigation, predators preyed on the family's lack of closure, subjecting them to unimaginable cruelty.
Yeah, this part is so dark. Two men who had absolutely zero connection to Caleb Hughes or the actual abduction saw the high-profile media coverage and just saw an opportunity for profit.
Disgusting.
They contacted the Brannen family and attempted to extort $75,000 from them, issuing a fake ransom demand and pretending they were holding Melissa hostage.
Which is just vile. The FBI successfully tracked these extortionists when they attempted to collect the money, and both men were sent to federal prison.
Good.
But the emotional whiplash for Tammy Brannen is difficult to comprehend. Every time the phone rang, she had to wonder if it was her daughter or just another predator.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Despite all of this, her resilience remains staggering. Years later, Tammy remarried and became Tammy Graybill. But she deliberately and legally kept the name Brannen listed in local phone books and public directories.
Yeah, she maintained that listing so that if Melissa were ever alive and managed to find a telephone, she could look up her mother's name in a directory and call home.
Oh, man. Tammy also became deeply involved with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Her father, Melissa's grandfather, even chaired an advisory committee there.
Right.
They actively turned their personal tragedy into a mechanism to protect others. But the psychological impact of this event did not stay contained within their family walls. It really bled out into the entire region.
It did. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you only have to look at the Reddit threads we analyzed for this deep dive. These are highly active community forums decades after the fact.
Yeah, it's wild how active they still are.
Right. People who grew up in Fairfax County, Burke, and Springfield share how Melissa's disappearance fundamentally altered the trajectory of their childhoods.
I read a comment from one user who lived in the apartment complex directly across the street from the Woodside Apartments. They explained that Melissa became the ultimate cautionary tale for an entire generation in that area.
Wow.
She was the explicit reason parents told you never to talk to strangers or wander away in public. It is deeply sad how these isolated local tragedies end up shaping the universal parenting rules we all grow up with. The heightened stranger danger anxiety of the 1990s was built on the backs of real missing children like Melissa.
Exactly. The local community lost its inherent sense of safety that night, and everyone assumed that with a 50-year sentence handed down in 1991, Caleb Hughes would remain locked in a cell until he died.
Right, the legal chapter of the story was supposed to be permanently closed.
But the justice system operates on its own math. And that math brings us to the infuriating 2024 twist in this case. Caleb Hughes did not serve 50 years. He served 29.
Which is just crazy.
Yeah, by accumulating credits for good behavior over the decades, he was officially released on parole in August 2019.
And when news of his release broke, those same local Reddit communities erupted in anger. People were absolutely horrified by the legal mechanics that allowed this.
Unanimously horrified.
The sentiment online was clear. Commentators noted the high recidivism rates among certain offenders, expressing outrage that a man convicted of such a high-profile crime was permitted to walk free, especially while he actively maintained his silence regarding the location of Melissa's body.
Yeah, but the internet's outrage didn't override the parole board. Hughes went to live in a halfway house in Virginia. He secured employment. He registered as a sex offender, fulfilling his legal requirements.
Right.
And for a few years, he seamlessly reintegrated into society until May of 2024, when he was suddenly arrested, had his parole revoked, and was sent back to prison to serve the remainder of his sentence until 2039.
And the reason for his rearrest is baffling.
He was caught actively babysitting.
Wait, babysitting?
Yes. Hughes had apparently charmed his coworkers at his new place of employment. He spun these elaborate, fabricated stories about his past, completely concealing the nature of his criminal record.
Unbelievable.
He was so convincing and presented himself as so remarkably normal that these coworkers trusted him to watch their children. He was babysitting for them on multiple occasions.
So what does this all mean? How does an individual convicted of one of the most notorious child abductions in Virginia history seamlessly integrate into a modern workplace and gain unsupervised access to children?
Well, it demonstrates that predators are often highly manipulative and really skilled at compartmentalizing their public personas.
Clearly.
But it also demonstrates that the modern safeguards we have implemented do actually work, provided the public utilizes them. Hughes was not apprehended through some complex police sting operation.
Right.
He was caught because one proactive parent decided to routinely check the public sex offender registry. They recognized his face, realized who was watching their coworkers' children, and immediately notified the authorities. This registry is the precise mechanism that put him back in prison today. That single parent's vigilance essentially stopped history from repeating itself.
It is a crucial reminder regarding community awareness. I mean, the tools exist, but you have to verify who you are bringing into your home.
Exactly.
Caleb Hughes is back behind bars, where he will remain for a very long time. But as we conclude our analysis today, we must acknowledge the dark reality that still hangs over the evidence, the trials, and the recent rearrest. The core tragedy of this case remains completely unresolved.
Yeah. Melissa Brannen's body has never been found. Over the past 3 decades, police have periodically dredged local lakes. Detectives theorize that given the timeline of Hughes returning home to wash his clothes by 1:00 a.m., he could only have driven within a 4-mile radius of the apartment complex.
Which narrows it down, but still.
Right. Investigators strongly suspect her remains might be hidden somewhere in the dense marshlands of neighboring Prince William County. But every single search operation has turned up empty.
And Hughes refuses to offer a single detail. For 36 years, he has maintained absolute silence, because he understands that the moment he provides investigators with her location, they will finally have the jurisdictional requirement they need to formally charge him with her murder.
Which leaves us with a deeply unsettling reality to ponder.
Ew.
Our justice system requires proof of location or a body to definitively charge someone with murder in many jurisdictions.
Right.
But by enforcing this standard, does the system inadvertently incentivize killers to maintain a victim's disappearance? Caleb Hughes traded his silence for a lesser charge.
Yeah.
So should the law be fundamentally restructured? Should withholding the location of a deceased victim carry the exact same or even harsher penalty as a murder charge, completely removing the legal benefit of this agonizing silence?